Thank you, Roderick, very much indeed for this very inspiring sharing and analysis of Father Hinteröcker. Please feel welcome to ask question.
I could not even mention any difference. I must say that on this hand, the Seven Hill wine, of course, is excellent. No doubt Dr. Salomon would have used that name if it was available, but it is taken up by the Jesuit winery. So he named the wine Norwood after the church, which Father Hinteröcker had built at Norwood. So I invite you to consider, would anyone name a bottle of wine after us?
This Hinteröcker, did he write any, because you mentioned some of his notes left behind his nephew, for instance, and from your research, suppose, let's say, a high school student in one of our Jesuit schools, they're interested in biology or science or botany, plants, seashells, and so on, would like to get a further understanding of this wonderful priest, whose observation of nature, bringing people closer to God. For example, let's say a high school student interested in science, like in Kowloon YN, for instance, because I remember in Hong Kong YN, we have a botany teacher, zoology teacher, Father Cryan, and he brought students to trips to countryside, and his notes are very popular among the Hong Kong students because of the school cert exam. Many of the questions are taken from his notes. But again, back to my question. From your research, can you mention maybe perhaps one or two books written by this wonderful Austrian Jesuit priest? Yes.
Yes, but I'm happy to do that. But in doing so, I have to admit a huge hole in my research. That level of research would only be possible for someone who can read German. His published articles, I can give you a list, and the Google helps me a bit with the translation. The book by Feigl and the contemporary publications from Hinteröcker's own time. He wrote about 8 articles. He was a member of learned societies in Austria, but not in Australia. However, they are all of this stuff is written in not just current German script, but in the older Fraktur Gothic type script. And Google Translate will not fix that for you. It's can't go back that far. So there is an opportunity for someone who happens to have German to do what I could not do in terms of his science. I was able to check whether he is still referred to in contemporary scientific works, and surely he is. In fact, one article not only quotes his scientific article, but uses the frontispiece of the article as a photograph in the journal entry. So he's still remembered scientifically. The garden which he founded is long gone. I was taken to the spot where the garden had been by a very sad archivist, but the trees which he planted survived his leaving, and they became part of the Linz State Arboretum. So forest garden. So they're still there. So really, with it, I apologize that I couldn't do that scientific research, and I invite you can learn German next week and go for it.
No, there is no doubt about the linguistic skills of Father Gregory, and we have prominent native German speakers here. And here we as we consider this as a starting point for further research. But maybe one, when we hear such a moving story, we also sometimes ask ourselves, can we learn something about also the drama? I would say the drama tonight was these divided communities. So where you were referring to the crisis and what we face in many situations now, is there would any lesson you could imagine to share how to kind of unite divided communities out of the story of Father Hinteröcker?
I will try to answer that question, but first I'll answer a question that you've indirectly asked about what we can learn from Hinteröcker. I have been reading a little bit, very basic level, on religion and science myself, and you get various descriptions of God. Okay, it's a bit secondhand, but in the eulogy, Father Tennyson Woods describes Hinteröcker as saying how God loves this plant, this bird, who have created it so beautifully. And I think what reading, I'm only shallow on the surface at this point, but reading books about religion and science, perhaps the God who loves would be a beautiful place to begin. You didn't ask that question, but I managed to get it in anyway. But there's a second part. No, he may have had an indirect role in the lifting of the excommunication by the bishop, who really had gone off his head at that point. And it is possible that because of his personal relationship to the bishop, having been the bishop's confessor some time before, that he was able to persuade the bishop to, one of the biographers hints that he was able to persuade the bishop to lift the communication. I've got only a hint in a biography of the last century.
Thank you very much for this presentation. For the first time, I had an opportunity to hear about this personality, and it's always good to know somebody who is close to your own personal background to some extent, because he was in Tarnopol, in Lviv, which was in the past the part of Poland, right? Working in that area, and then contributing to science and mission, although in Australia. But what is interesting in his personality, what you presented, and what intrigues me a little bit, are two elements that I want to raise now. Not so much about science, because yes, his contribution is really remarkable. Just in a few years, he was able to discover, to describe, to share with the Western world a lot of discoveries there. One is the issue related to dealing with the church authorities and Jesuit institutions or superiors. As it often happened in the history of the Society of Jesus, in the relationship with the hierarchical church, there were some misunderstandings in terms of pursuing certain policy of mission in the missionary territories. Originally, he was, as you mentioned, he was interested in working with Aboriginal people, right? He volunteered for this mission because there was a request from the Vatican to send missionaries to work with Aborigine people. So he generously offered himself. Then he arrives, nothing, sorry, we don't have a job for you. Luckily, as he acknowledged that he could combine a passion, a pastime of his life, which was science, and in this sense to continue his work, and then to have also other opportunities, even to work with Poles. I'm also glad to hear that he worked with the Poles in Australia, able to speak Polish and so on, my mother tongue as well. Then the question is about his commitment, because when he was informed, well, we don't have enough Jesuits to send you to work with Aborigines people. Well, why he was not sent alone, as in many other parts of the world, Jesuits work alone, individually, with indigenous people, right? And the second was in the certain moment when he was already quite involved in the pastoral work, the Jesuits, the superiors, wanted to send him back to Austria. And then it was not Jesuits who defended him, but the diocesan clergy, right?
So the first point, it was in fact the Jesuits who much later established their mission to Aborigines near Darwin at a place called Daly River. Had he lived another 20 years, he might have been part of that. The second was just the remarkably good impression he had made in such a short time, because when the superiors thought about withdrawing him back to Austria, maybe sending him on another mission, I don't know, it was the diocesan clergy in Adelaide and laity who petitioned that he would please stay. And so that petition was granted. So we find a man who, how can we say, does not complain because the cards in his hand are not what he wants. He plays with the cards God gives him. And so really someone who just shows a great level of responding to the circumstances in which he found himself. He was that kind of person.
Yes, this kind of flexibility is quite remarkable, and another good example to be able to, of course, dedicate a lot of time to science, but when the pastoral need, he was always ready to go and to help. Another question, and the last one, is a little bit broader context, because I'm interested, I would like to ask about the Jesuit involvement in the mission among the Aborigines. And in the context of this stolen generation, right, that officially the Australian government, 2008, and 1 year later, Catholic Church also officially apologized for stealing, for this harm done to the Aborigines people. Almost 2 million people, reduced almost to 300,000. So there was a huge, there were huge consequences of this separation, of this integration policy of the colonizers at that time, right? And the Catholic Church participated in it because received in the schools stolen children for the education, because that was the easiest way to separate them from the parents, not so that they do not have enough influence on the education of their children. It's easier to convert them, right? Sorry, but this was the policy which we should, and the church is, I think, ashamed of, quite aware of now. So do you have any information about what was the Jesuit involvement at that time in this process of this project, so to speak of?
I believe there are people studying the question of the Jesuit history with the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. I'm not up to date with that. Sorry, I won't try.
We feel honored by our online participants, so I would warmly welcome you. Just maybe make it simple, unmute yourself and jump in also by video, and seize the chance to ask a question to Dr. Roderick O'Brien, please. Or would our Austrian prominent participant there? This priest.
I'm very happy to get to know. I would read more the first time, because I'm also very interested in science, religion, and this dialogue myself. Our founder, Arnold Janssens, comes from mathematics and from natural science. He was teaching natural science in Bochwald 12 years before he founded the Divine Word Missionaries in Germany. So I'm very happy to read more about this priest. Where is he from in Austria? I missed where he comes from in Austria. Linz, Linz, yeah. Linz. Ah, very good. Thank you very much for this very inspiring.
Good. I would like to present to the Macau Ricci Institute another book for your library related to the current times in which we live, edited by an Australian Jesuit. So it,
Yes. That was small, curious. You spent all this time in Xi'an. How did you run across this gentleman down in Adelaide?
sorry?
You spent a lot of time teaching in Xi'an.
No. The last of those years was spent in Xi'an. Only one.
Only one. Oh, I see.
Yeah, but I did enjoy it very much.
I see. How did you run across this gentleman? How did you get interested in this missionary? How did you get interested in this missionary?
I'm accidentally, I think and I went as a teacher. I'm a lawyer by original training, so I had the opportunity to teach a little bit of international law using English as the medium. And yeah, I actually enjoyed that opportunity to be in Xi'an and teaching there.
Yes. Well, how did you run across this gentleman to
This
study?
one?
Yes.
Remember, I mentioned the Naracoorte Caves. In 1989, I was parish priest of Naracoorte, and it was the centenary of the death of Hinteröcker's friend, Tennyson Woods. So somebody said, do something. So I'd never heard of him, Woods. And I organized a seminar, got interested in Woods. I like writing. I've done a few things about Woods. And then from Woods, I discovered his friend, Hinteröcker. And I thought, this guy is also a good guy. I would have liked to have met them both.
Yeah, thank you, Roderick. I'm always very curious about the Austrian Jesuits in Australia. So this is the first history I have. We know that Australia has a very particular biodiversity, unique, no? 2 questions. What was his impressions describing this very, very specific and diverse and different biodiversity?
I'm sorry, I can't answer that question.
Okay.
My knowledge of his science is blocked by my inability to read.
Okay, and a second question, do you know any species that was named after him? Did he?
I'm not aware of any. The research that I've done hasn't given me anything along those lines. And remember, he didn't publish as a scientist. His role in Australia was basically collecting. The expedition that he did, for example, to the Flinders Island, the notes have disappeared. So who knows what he might have got out of those. But no, Woods, his friend Woods has a mountain and some shells, but I'm not aware of anything for Hinteröcker.
Well, with no more questions, I also would mention with really great gratitude that Roderick contributed over many years to our journal, also as co-editor of the Macau Ricci Institute journal. So the last topic was issue number 11 on changing China, as we remembered also Jonathan Spence. The next one will be the proceedings of our symposium on Ferdinand Verbiest, and the upcoming will be featuring our research projects.